Spinning Triangle, Essay Number 2. A Shallow Depth Dive into Contemporary Danish Jazz. Here's a little backstory on me that I've said so many times that sometimes I question how true it is. Growing up in a strict Christian household, many forms of entertainment were scrutinized to an unreasonable degree. In my household, one of these things was music. I was given a clear choice. I could listen to Christian music or I could listen to instrumental music. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, I chose to listen primarily to instrumental music, with a smattering of Christian metal and rap because that was edgy enough to bother my conservative parents. I'm not diving into my whole story here. I just needed to get that story out of the way to explain why I, even now, have such a strong affinity for instrumental music. In casual conversation, anyone who has met me and asked me what kind of music I like or dislike has been given the boring answer of, I love all music, which is true, but a bit misleading. In my head, music and the poetry that sometimes accompanies music are not one and the same, but that's a rant for another day. One of my musical homes is contemporary British jazz, specifically groups like Mammal Hands, Go-Go Penguin, Portico Quartet, and The Comet is Coming. I don't know how I landed here, but it's been a very good place to return to after long musical voyages. Sometimes, musical journeys can start quite unexpectedly. It can start with a familiar name, and then there, at the bottom, there are related artists. On my musical streaming service, Apple Music, things can get out of hand quite quickly as a single starting point branches off farther into the unknown. This can be a blessing and makes for very fun listens, especially discovering more obscure artists with decent discographies ripe for the picking. On this occasion, I was listening to Mammal Hands as I tend to do quite often. Side note, I highly recommend all of their albums. Something about them is so wonderful on every listen, but I understand if it's not enough substance for some people. Anyway, after finishing shadow work for probably the 20th time, Apple Music suggested an artist with an interesting name, Girls in Airports. Before I go to spotlight some of these discoveries, a quick disclaimer. I'm not a music critic and my vocabulary isn't equipped with the tools to describe what these are in a more accurate sense. I know that all these albums make me happy and they're calming. The artistry behind them might not be showy, but I can feel the people on the other side. I can say that all these bands are worth listening to, but similar to Mammal Hands, there might not be enough substance for many of you. Also, here's a blanket apology for all the mispronouncing I will do. I am going to butcher lots of names. Spotlight 1. Girls in Airports. On August 4th, 2023, I listened to 5 Girls in Airports albums. I started with their newest offering and went backwards in time. The album, How It Is Now, was so well constructed and enjoyable to me that I leapt, no pun intended, into their previous album, Leap. Leap had a different vibe to it, but it was also enjoyable. After going 2 for 2, I went on and on and on. Each album something that I would like to return to later. By the time I got to the final album of the day, Kaikora, I was happy with the start of this new exploration, and I knew that I wanted more. I tabled the first album they had on Apple Music for later, and jumped into the next band. Spotlight 2. Svaneborg Kardyb. Literally the next day, with moderate expectations, I went on to an artist related to Girls in Airports. They had a strange name, but I was willing to give them a shot. I played the first few seconds of Op, the first song on Overtage, and I knew I was ready for something wonderful. I don't know if it was the instrumentation, the sprinkling of outside cultures, or the dynamics of how the songs all felt different yet cohesive. I fell in love with my first exposure to this artist. Ethereal but present, delicious harmony, wonderfully mastered. As I went back in time and listened to their other 2 albums, I was delighted across both of them. In a strange way, I felt like these albums were made specifically for me, as ridiculous as that sounds. To feel so comfortable and be on the same page as an artist on a mere first listen isn't something I'm quite used to. The feel of their music reminded me lots of a close to my heart favorite, Limbic System. Perhaps the nature of a duo can bring out so much more out of the other member. By the time I finished Knob, I understood that this voyage wasn't coming to a close anytime soon. By this point, With 2 bands scratching my itch so delightfully, I needed more. I was falling in love with yet another jazz scene of the world. I had known of Nordic jazz, but mostly from Norway and Sweden, but now I was being shown where another cove of spice was. I was enthralled, and this was now a full voyage deep into the heart of Copenhagen. The next group continued the pattern. Spotlight 3, Bremer McCoy. Enter the next artist in the recommendation chain, Bremer McCoy. From the very first song on their album Natten, I understood. There was something special about this jazz scene that resonated with me highly. I could close my eyes and imagine myself drinking sparkling water in a club with low chatter as people don't want to talk loud enough to disrupt the ambiance flowing from the masters. Over the next few days, I continued to listen, and the music moved me. I wanted to be more creative again. I wanted to re-enter society. Wanted to climb a tall mountain and scream my name to the very heavens. I couldn't tell you what about this music gave me so much life so quickly, but it very much did. All 4 of the albums I listened to were fabulous. They became shorter as I moved on. It was a wonderful couple of days. I took a short break from Danish jazz after their 2013 album to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. Everything had sounded too good, and I was worried that I was falling under some kind of spell. But after those days, I returned to the next and final band on our list. Spotlight 4, Hvalfugl. Not trying to ruin whatever narrative tension is going on here, but the last artist was also amazing. It was relaxing to my very core, but in a very different way from Bremer McCoy. All their albums at the time were some kind of nourishment to my soul. When I finished this discography, I knew that there was something special here, something beautiful that everyone in this scene was striving for, like trying to capture the nature of humanity on a canvas. It seems like an impossible task, but when I listen to some of these tracks, I can feel the tear glands itching to do something. This felt deeper than just a subculture of something I already liked. I was moved by all these artists in their own unique ways. They showed me a path to being better in some ways even I couldn't articulate it to you now. I could be overreacting, but I was happy during all 12.5 albums I listened to. So, what's the moral here? What's the conclusion? In short, I think that there's always more out there that you haven't found that might resonate with you and make you drop to your knees with the childlike joy it brings to your heart. I by no means felt like I was locked into anything, but now I feel like I have even more great options when I'm in this kind of a mood. I would like to learn more about this scene, and there's so many more artists I gave passing listens to who I'll definitely be looking at more deeply as the days go on. Even people I didn't mention explicitly, like Casper Staub Trio, The Pogo Problem, Athletic Progression, and Rogue Signal. This just goes to show that the world has more for us to discover and explore. For every place you reach, there are still thousands of others ripe to share their rich bounty. I can say with confidence that I'm a big fan of Danish jazz, or at least the groups I've already mentioned. Explore the seas, because you don't know what treasure is out there. Explore the seas because you want to taste the saltwater wind in your mane. Explore the seas because in exploring and finding these new to us places, we also find our lives and so much more.